There are cars that were born to be muscle cars. We all know them. We all expect them. But today we're not talking about those. Today we're talking about cars that had no right to be fast. Cars that were never designed to race, that never appeared in ads screaming about horsepower, that didn't wear stripes, intimidating names, or quarter-mile promises. And yet, they left behind cars that were born for exactly that. Elegant sedans, luxury coupes, cars designed to travel in comfort, in silence, with the radio on and the world slowly passing by the window. Cars that looked harmless, until someone made the mistake of underestimating them. Because in the 1960s, Detroit made mistakes too. Wonderful mistakes. Mistakes where absurdly powerful engines ended up hidden beneath calm, elegant, almost boring bodies. In this video, you're going to discover cars that were never muscle cars, but still humiliated the fast ones. If you're passionate about cars with history, character, and secrets few people know, hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we tell the stories that never made it into the brochures. Buckle up. Because some of the most dangerous muscle cars never looked like muscle cars at all. 1963 Buick Riviera. This is one of those cars that, even today, nobody looks at and thinks about racing. Its design is clean, elegant, almost European, a long, low, refined coupe, built to arrive well-dressed, not to launch hard from a stoplight. Buick presented it as a work of style and sophistication. A car for those who wanted distinction without extravagance, luxury without noise. Nothing in its silhouette suggests aggression. And that's exactly where the deception begins. Because under that seemingly endless hood, Buick hid one of the most serious engines of its era. The famous 425 Nailhead V8, a 425 cubic inch engine, about 7.0 liters, producing around 340 horsepower. An engine not designed to rev high or impress on spec sheets, but to deliver something far more dangerous on the street. While other cars needed to scream to accelerate, the Riviera simply pushed, hard, constantly, unexpectedly. On paper, the Riviera could reach 60 miles per hour in just over 7 seconds, an impressive figure for a luxury coupe in the early 1960s. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. What was truly unsettling was how it did it. No drama, no excessive noise, no sense of effort. The car moved forward with such calm confidence that its size and weight seemed to disappear completely. And that's the key to the Riviera's secret muscle. It didn't make you feel fast, it made you feel comfortable. So comfortable that many drivers didn't realize how fast they were going until they glanced at the speedometer, while classic muscle cars transmitted tension, vibration, and noise. The Riviera delivered silence, stability, and a sense of total control. It was a car capable of humiliating far more famous rivals without anyone seeing it coming. Inside, the experience reinforced that deception. Wide seats, quality materials, a relaxed driving position, and an atmosphere closer to an elegant living room than a high-performance car. Nothing prepared you for what happened when you pressed the accelerator just a little deeper. And that made it even more dangerous, because it didn't warn you, it didn't intimidate, it simply responded. Today, the 1963 Buick Riviera is still admired for its design, but many people continue to underestimate what it was capable of in its time. It wasn't born as a muscle car. It was never meant to compete in that world. And yet, it became one of the clearest examples of how Detroit sometimes created monsters by accident. Elegant, silent, and absurdly fast. On today's market, a well-preserved Riviera typically sells between $40,000 and $70,000, depending on condition and originality. And if this car already feels like a contradiction, wait for the next one, because now we're talking about a model that looked even calmer and hid an even more serious engineering mistake. 1964 Oldsmobile Jetstar I. At first glance, it looked like a large, serious, respectable sedan. The kind of car you'd associate with long trips, calm executives, and relaxed driving. It had no sporty image, didn't seek attention, and was never presented as anything radical. On the surface, it was completely normal. But beneath that discreet body, Oldsmobile made one of those wonderful mistakes that could only happen in the 1960s. They decided to install a massive 394 cubic inch V8, about 6.5 liters, capable of producing around 345 horsepower, in a car that was never meant to handle that kind of power. This engine wasn't just big, it was forceful. It delivered torque immediately, without softening the response, without hiding its character. For a family sedan, it was a dangerously exaggerated combination. The result was unsettling. The Jetstar I could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 7 seconds, numbers that put it right alongside, or even ahead of, several early muscle cars. But once again, the most disturbing part wasn't the figures, it was how it achieved them. There was no theater, no drama. It simply surged forward with a continuous force that seemed never to run out, as if the car always had more than it was showing. And here lies the Jetstar's true secret. Nobody expected it. Not from the outside, not from the inside, and certainly not at a stoplight. Its conservative appearance caused other drivers to underestimate it constantly. And that was their biggest mistake. Because when the Oldsmobile accelerated, it made it clear it had never been built with moderation in mind. It was far too fast for the image it projected. Inside, everything reinforced that contradiction. A spacious, comfortable interior, focused on comfort and everyday use. Nothing suggested you were sitting in a sedan capable of putting far more famous cars in trouble. That mix of total normality and excessive power made the Jetstar an anomaly within Oldsmobile's lineup, a car that seemed to be born without a clear plan. And that's exactly why it became so dangerous. Today, the 1964 Oldsmobile Jetstar I remains largely unknown, even among enthusiasts. On today's market, a well-kept example usually sells between $25,000 and $45,000, surprisingly accessible numbers for a car with this level of hidden performance. 1966, Ford LTD. This is probably one of the greatest examples of automotive deception on this entire list. Nobody, absolutely nobody, looked at an LTD and thought about performance. It was a big, comfortable, elegant, deeply conservative sedan. The kind of car you imagine parked in front of a suburban home, ready for family trips and relaxed highway cruising. There was nothing in its design that suggested speed, aggression, or sporting intent. But Ford, at the height of the 1960s horsepower war, decided to do something completely out of place. They offered the LTD with one of the most serious engines in their catalog, the 427 cubic inch V8, about 7.0 liters, producing around 410 horsepower. An engine developed with racing in mind, installed without shame in a sedan that was never designed to hide something like that under its hood. The result was a car that shattered all visual logic. On the street, the LTD 427 was a true anomaly. Despite its size and weight, it could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 6.5 seconds, numbers that put it ahead of many well-known muscle cars. But once again, the truly unsettling part wasn't the speed, it was how it delivered it. Without excessive noise, without apparent tension, the car moved forward with a silent authority that made you forget entirely that you were driving a luxury sedan. Inside, everything reinforced that contradiction. A spacious, comfortable interior, isolated from outside noise, designed for long journeys and relaxed driving. Nothing about the experience suggested you were sitting on top of one of the most respected engines of the decade. It was easy to underestimate, and that was exactly the biggest mistake anyone could make. Today, the Ford LTD 427 is one of the rarest and least known combinations of the American Golden Era. It was never an official muscle car. It never tried to be one. And yet, it became one of the most extreme sleepers of its time. On today's market, the few authentic surviving examples can easily exceed $60,000 to $90,000, depending on condition and documentation. And now, I want your opinion. Of the 3 cars we've seen so far, which one do you find the most deceptive? The elegant Riviera, the forgotten Jetstar, or this LTD that looked completely harmless? Leave it in the comments, because what comes next keeps pushing even further the limits of what never should have been this fast. 1963 Rambler Ambassador. Rambler was never a brand associated with brute power, racing, or muscle. Quite the opposite. It was known for its rational approach for efficient, well-thought-out cars that many people even considered boring. And that's exactly why the Ambassador fits so uncomfortably into this story. At first glance, the Ambassador looked like an elegant, proper, conservative sedan. Clean lines, balanced proportions, and an image that communicated common sense rather than excitement. It was the car of someone who valued logic, not showmanship. Nobody, absolutely nobody, looked at it expecting something fast. And that's where Rambler played its best card. Under the hood, the Ambassador could be fitted with a 327 cubic inch V8, about 5.4 liters, producing around 270 horsepower. That number might not sound outrageous compared to other cars on this list, but here's the key detail. The Rambler was significantly lighter than many of its direct rivals. That combination of relatively low weight and respectable power gave it a surprisingly favorable power-to-weight ratio for a sedan that looked so calm and sensible. In real-world driving, the Ambassador could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 7 seconds, putting it right alongside cars with a much more aggressive image. But once again, the real impact wasn't just in the numbers, it was in the experience. The car accelerated with a disconcerting naturalness, without mechanical stress, without excessive noise, as if everything had been perfectly calculated. It didn't try to be fast through excess, but through balance. While other manufacturers chased ever larger engines and ever heavier bodies, Rambler chose a smarter solution: less weight, better balance, enough power. The result was a car that surprised without needing to dominate. Inside, the Ambassador reinforced that rational image. A spacious, comfortable, well-finished interior, designed for daily use and long trips. Nothing screamed performance. Nothing prepared the driver for the sensation that appeared when you pressed the accelerator with intent. It was a car that punished underestimation, not with drama, but with efficiency. Today, the 1963 Rambler Ambassador remains one of the most underrated sleepers of the 1960s. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $25,000 and $45,000, a surprisingly low figure for a car with this level of hidden character. And if this car made you rethink what performance really means, wait for the next one. Because now we move into Pontiac territory, with a model that was big, elegant, and far more serious than it looked at first glance. 1965, Pontiac Catalina 2+2. This is one of those cars that permanently lives in the shadow of a much more famous name. When people talk about Pontiac in the 1960s, almost everyone immediately thinks of the GTO. And that's exactly the problem. Because while the GTO took all the spotlight, the Catalina did its job quietly and did it very well. At first glance, it looked like a large, elegant coupe, clearly oriented toward comfort. It didn't have the radical image of a pure muscle car, nor did it try to be the center of attention. It was long, wide, refined, and solid, designed to travel fast and comfortably on the highway, not to fight at stoplights. Many saw it as a civilized Pontiac, and that was the mistake. Under the hood, it could be equipped with truly serious V8 engines, such as the 421 cubic inch unit, producing around 360 horsepower. This was not an engine built for subtlety. It delivered massive torque from low RPM, enough to move a large, heavy car with total authority and no visible effort. It didn't scream or exaggerate. It simply pushed forward with constant, decisive force. In practice, it could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 6.5 seconds, placing it squarely in muscle car territory, even if its appearance didn't give it away. And once again, the real impact wasn't just in the numbers, but in the experience. The car felt stable, planted, and surprisingly fast for something that seemed so comfort-oriented. While the GTO offered a rawer, louder, more aggressive experience, the 2+2 delivered the same idea from a different angle. It offered speed wrapped in luxury, power without rough edges, and a sense of control that made everything feel easy. It was the kind of car that could cruise at high speeds for long periods without tiring either the driver or the machine. Inside, the contrast was total. Wide seats, good sound insulation, quality materials, and a driving experience designed to devour miles. Nothing inside suggested you were sitting in a car capable of accelerating, like many of the biggest names in American performance. And that's exactly why it surprised anyone who made the mistake of underestimating it. Today, the Catalina 2+2 remains one of the great forgotten cars of the muscle era. It was never as famous as the GTO. It never sought that spotlight. But those who know its history understand that it was one of the fastest and most complete full-size coupes of its time. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $45,000 and $75,000, depending on configuration and condition. And what comes next shifts the focus once again, because the next car wasn't just big and elegant, it was downright massive. And yet, it hit a level of performance few expected to find in something of that size. 1962, Chrysler Newport 413. This car seemed designed to go completely unnoticed. It didn't have the extravagance of a Cadillac or the intimidating presence of an Imperial. It was elegant, proper, and almost conservative, a large, comfortable car perfectly aligned with the idea of an upscale family sedan. Nothing about its appearance suggested danger, and that was exactly the trick. But Chrysler in those years didn't understand the word moderation when it came to engines. Under the hood of the Newport could be found the massive 413 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 350 horsepower, and above all, enormous torque. This wasn't an engine built to impress with refined numbers. It was built to push with authority, to move huge masses, and to do it with no apparent effort. On the road, it behaved in an almost unsettling way. Despite its size and weight, it could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds. Hard to believe for a car that looked designed purely for comfort. But once again, the impact wasn't just the acceleration, it was how easily it achieved it. The car didn't feel strained. It didn't feel stressed. It simply moved forward as if power were infinite. It was the kind of car no one took seriously, until it disappeared into the distance with disarming ease. While other cars demanded constant attention, the Chrysler delivered stability, smoothness, and a sense of composure that made everything feel under control, even at very high speeds. Inside, the atmosphere reinforced that illusion of calm. Wide seats, soft suspension, excellent sound insulation, and a driving experience designed for long distances. Nothing warned you that you were sitting on top of one of the largest and most capable engines of its era. It was easy to relax too much, and that's where its real danger lived. Today, the Chrysler Newport 413 is one of those classics many people overlook. It was never a muscle car, never had that reputation. And maybe that's exactly why it remains so interesting. On today's market, a well-kept Newport typically sells between $25,000 and $45,000. A modest figure for a car with such presence and hidden performance. 1964. Studebaker Avanti R2. The Avanti doesn't look like a muscle car. In fact, it doesn't look like almost anything Detroit was building at the time. Its design is strange, futuristic, almost European, low, smooth, with minimal chrome, no aggressive lines, and none of the classic American proportions. It looked like it came from another place, and another time. And for many people, it simply didn't fit. Studebaker was already fighting for survival when it decided to launch the Avanti. Instead of playing it safe, it did the exact opposite. It bet on a radical design and engineering that challenged all commercial logic. The Avanti was never meant to compete with muscle cars. That wasn't the goal, but someone inside the company decided that if they were going to risk everything, they would do it under the hood as well. That's where the Avanti R2's true secret muscle appears. A 289 cubic inch V8, about 4.7 liters, equipped with a Paxton supercharger, producing around 290 horsepower. That figure might not seem outrageous compared to the big block monsters, but the Avanti was lighter, more aerodynamic, and far more efficient at high speed. The result was a car that didn't just accelerate hard, but kept pulling where many others started to run out of breath. On paper, the Avanti R2 could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds and reach top speeds close to 170 miles per hour in specific configurations, making it one of the fastest production cars in the world at the time. And it did it without looking fast, without roaring, without intimidation. It was speed wrapped in silence and strange design. What was truly unsettling about the Avanti was how it felt behind the wheel. The acceleration wasn't brutal or chaotic. It was progressive, constant, as if the car were always one step ahead of what the driver expected. While other cars transmitted mechanical violence, the Avanti transmitted precision. It was a different kind of performance, colder, more technical, and for that very reason, more dangerous to anyone who underestimated it. Inside, the contrast continued. A modern for the time interior, with driver-focused instrumentation and a feeling closer to a grand tourer than a traditional American car. Nothing about it followed the established rules, and maybe that's why the Avanti was never fully understood in its own time. Today, the Studebaker Avanti R2 is considered one of the great what-ifs in American automotive history. It wasn't born as a muscle car. It never wanted to be one. But it ended up being one of the fastest and most advanced cars of its era. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $80,000 and $120,000, reflecting not only its performance, but also its rarity and historical importance. And that brings us to the end of this journey through one of the most fascinating contradictions of the 1960s. Cars that were never muscle cars, that weren't born to race or to impress, yet hid power capable of humiliating far more famous rivals. After seeing all these examples, I want to know what you think. Which of these cars do you believe was the true secret muscle? The elegant one no one expected, the seemingly boring sedan, or the experiment that ended up being too fast for its own good? Leave it in the comments because that's where these stories stay alive, and where different ways of understanding passion for cars collide. And if you're still curious to explore this hidden side of American automobiles, I recommend watching the latest video we published on the channel. There, we talk about elegant cars that hid a dangerous secret, luxury machines that looked calm but were far faster and more dangerous than anyone imagined. It's the perfect companion to the journey we just took. Click on the video on screen and continue with us through the golden age of the American automobile. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you on the next journey through history on wheels.